And oh, by the way, this is a practice for us. We haven't yet finalized on the design that we would like to offer to the general public about how to use the family tree and its functions to elevate one's health or well-being. And I'm more of an advocate of future generations. If we really knew that the things we do now so dramatically affect our future family, we would want to leave them treasures now if we could. I mean, we're talking, the significance of it is we could provide healthy, loving environment for our great-grandchildren if we were to choose to do so. So I know that sounds a little outrageous, but genetics is already proving that the choices of previous generations come down to us through our family tree, and they now produce every manner of physical suffering or disease or so on and so on. So I'm going to introduce you to the concept of how to individually acknowledge different ones of the family tree. So this is your basic red and blue family tree, and we've got some other ones coming up here in a moment. The blue is from your mother's side of the family. 3 generations, great-grandparents back here. Later on, these numbers become more significant, but right now they're not really too significant. The red is from the father's family, and so on. And then we arrange them in these numbers according to body positions, the head being number 6 and the throat 5 and 4 and 3 and 2. Later on, we'll have a fairly specific map of human physical symptoms and their correspondences to different glands, organs, and body systems. Now, some of that's already available on other maps available on the Rayid International Facebook page. You can get those. They're downloadables for free. But there's a new map coming that describes how your mother's relationship to her father directly affects you. I mean, that's an obvious, but your mother's relationship to her father will affect you in specific locations, and then they will affect your children and your grandchildren in different locations. Understanding how these sequences work and how the dynamics of feelings are transferred gives us an opportunity to change things that would otherwise be difficult for ourselves or our children. Now, one of the attitudes that I found to be most effective in the long run is to have an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of thankfulness, an attitude of compassion, some feeling that you're going there to increase your appreciation, acknowledgement, and yes, even your capacity to love them more. I've often said to people, on a scale from 1 to 100, how much do you love your mother's mother's mother? And some people say to me, I don't even know who she is. I mean, I'm going, okay, well, would you consider that your mother's relationship to her mother was, well, pretty important to your mother? Yes, okay. And your grandmother's relationship to her mother, that's mother's mother's mother. People go, oh, well, I know nothing about her, or she died, or I don't care, or something. I'm suggesting on a scale to 1 to 100, if your actual emotional appreciation is anything less than a 10, you're probably damaging yourself. I'm saying that by the increase of the desire to feel, appreciate, have compassion for, acknowledge a specific person in your family tree, it's going to help everybody in the past and the future to some degree. Now, this is not about, family worship or ancestral worship or something. People have asked me before. No, this is about appreciating that they are genetically linked to us and future generations, and that by the sincere desire to want to increase my awareness, acknowledgement, feeling about that I can, in some form or another, be changing the dynamics of the life force coming through the family tree. Now, I've seen this thousands of times. I've done this privately in private consultations with people, and I've seen absolutely remarkable results from simply doing what I'm saying, like what I call ring the bell. Now, I just took you mentally to your mother's mother's mother. Whether or not you ever really spent any time with her, we have now spent not only individual time, but collective time where we are engaged in the acknowledgement of mother's mother's mother. Now, I've seen the results of that very quickly change symptoms in the grandchildren. I know that's anecdotal. I don't have scientific evidence of that working, but I can assure you I've witnessed it again and again. So as a habit, I have a tendency to point people to the individual grandparents and great-grandparents, and I call it just ringing the bell. Just taking them there, spending a moment with it. To me, it almost feels like a energetic soap bubble in the field. You go there and it collapses, and the circulation of the life force, at least momentarily, starts to flow differently. I'm suggesting that the long-term appreciation of this position would not only make it last longer, but extend it further into the future. So yes, I urge you to spend time emotionally with your mother's mother's mother. Now, just so you know, the numbers are also significant, because 4 in the blue is from the mother's side, obviously. 4 in the red is from the father's side. To me, 4 is around the heart. So that you have 2 functions of the heart, the red being the outbound or arterial function of the heart, the blue being the incoming or the receiving function of the heart. So every single position, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on, they're interwoven and linked. And that by the momentary acknowledgement of their existence, you're actually increasing the likelihood of life force flowing more dynamically in that position. So this starts out with the singular acknowledgement of individual positions in the family tree. Now, we will provide a map about all of these positions and their corresponding glands and organs and body systems, and the common symptoms that will occasionally occur that help us know that it has to do with a single position. For example, virtually all skin conditions are ruled by one position. That is your mother's father's mother. We call her number 6. Obviously, 6 is in the head. Number 6, blue, 6, girl, has to do with the experience of the feminine. And to me, that's the pineal. And this is the place that rules not only the skin, but the circadian rhythm, night experiences, and a bunch of very other important things. So having an appreciation for your mother's father's mother, not only does it start to change the energetic functions of this location, it starts to change the energetics down to her son. Number 6 is son, is your mother's father, obviously, but the mother's father is one of the most significant positions to begin with, and that's what we call the lung line or the breathing. Now, for me, the number 1 grandfather position is the line of the spear tip of the metabolic system. Oftentimes overlooked, but the breathing function is the beginning of all of the metabolic function. So the appreciation for mother's father. And by that, I would suggest, if possible, talk to him, and if possible, actually get his history with his own family. Knowledge helps. If you have the knowledge, it helps. If it's not available, don't worry about it. We can help still stimulate the circulation flow, but go back, if you have your grandfather available to you, ask him about his childhood. That's going to be the most important. Now, be prepared that most grandparents and even great-grandparents, but mostly grandparents, will most commonly not tell you the truth. I'm sorry, they have a tendency to go, oh, they did their best, they were okay, yes, when they were dying, we got along, and there's lots of stories about grandparents and relationship to their own parents, and it's a rare situation where you get a grandparent actually telling you the truth about their own childhood and their feelings about their mother or their father in this situation. Now, every one of these relationships that you see here, they have a particular kind of dynamic, and I call that dynamic a circuit. A circuit would be defined as a closed system of energy. It's closed. So that my grandfather's feelings about his mother, under the age of 8 particularly, is a circuit. My great-grandmother's feelings about her son is another circuit. So there's 2 primary circuits in every location. Now, when that ancestor passes, that circuit remains. And for me, that circuit becomes the crystallization of protein tags that now become epigenetic molecules traveling along with the DNA. Now, I think it's really possible to be able to acknowledge these circuits and eventually to be able to help begin the process of resolving them. Now, there are other forms of dynamics here that are not quite as visible, but are capable of causing a great deal of damage and or healing. One of the most common difficulties is, sorry about this, ladies, the mother-in-law. The common experience is, for example, this is your grandmother, your mother's mother. She obviously married your mother's father, but that might have been his own mother. That was her favorite son, and you're the daughter-in-law. And if there's a conflict in this direction here between the mother-in-law or the daughter-in-law, this is one of the most energetically disturbed places in the family tree. And these axes of these places, they exist in many locations. And just so you know, your family tree is not related to each other except through you. And I know that's a little challenging, but they are not really related to each other except when it comes down to your mother in relationship to them, but comes down to you. Sooner or later, I'm going to suggest that the access and the removal of unresolved emotional damage is going to help you do a lot of things that you wouldn't know were even possible. So I'm going to take you through the dynamics of the mother's side of the family, and I'm going to come up to a graphic window here for a moment, and we're going to share the screen, send it back to you. I just want to show you some graphics. This is a colorful dynamic, and you see 4 different columns of colors and numbers. These 4 different columns, to me, they represent different channels of energy. Not only channels of energy, they represent the metabolic system, systems of elimination, digestion, distribution, and all of the basic physiological functions are related to how well these energy points in your family tree actually circulate. So if there are circuits that cause difficulties in these different locations, it's going to be to your long-term benefit and to the benefit of your children and grandchildren if you begin to resolve these different circuits. So one of the ways to resolve the circuits is to acknowledge the link between specific parts of the family tree. For example, on the columns to your right, the ones that are light blue, number 1, 3, and 5, these are the 3 grandfathers, triangles, that are associated with the metabolic system. They connect energetically the lung system, the breathing system, the pancreatic function, and into the throat or parathyroid function, and the regulation of all of the body chemistry. This is essential. So one of the ways of being able to appreciate this is to take individual grandfathers and actually appreciate them individually, like mother's father, that's the one at the bottom, the blue one, and just simply acknowledge or appreciate that this man is a significant part of your life, and he's directly influencing how well you breathe. Now, he's not going to be the only influence, obviously, but there are major influences coming through and between him and 2 other grandfathers. That's grandfather number 3. That's going to be mother's father, and grandfather number 5, which is mother's father's father. And without explaining exactly how, these 3 men, they are a triangulation of the circulation of life force that is so important for us to be able to at least acknowledge the feeling of. Now, just so you know, and it's not intended to be cycles and seasons involved in this, but to give you an idea of it, number 1 is the first month of winter, number 3, the second month, number 5, the third month just before spring. So these are the 3 cool months of winter leading into the equinox and the arrival of the spring temperatures and personal growth. Now, why that's important to at least acknowledge is that the circulation of 1, 3, and 5 will automatically stimulate the flow of life force to the red on the far left, the circulation of the body, the gold 4 on the far left, and the distribution of life force at the top purple number 6. So 1, 3, 5 activates 2, 4, and 6. So these different energies are what's called the ascending life forces. Ascending because in the northern hemisphere, they correspond with the increase of day length starting on December 21st, all the way through the last of the ascent, which is June 21st. So you have 6 months of ascending day length, followed by 6 months of descending day length. And these correspond to different parts of the family tree. Yes, I get it. That's a lot. So you start off with a singular appreciation of number 1. Let's just come back for a moment from that. So if we spent the rest of the day just focused on number 1 and all of the interwoven feelings, all of the colors, sounds, music, all of the forms of symbology, the types of plants and animals and minerals, if we spent the entire day just focusing on number 1, it would be a day well spent. Now, if we also added to that the sincere desire to want to feel. Now, the reason that this is so important is that number 1, well, is number 1. And the reason it's number 1 is that it is the very first thing I need to do in order to change me. It is the single most important thing that I will continuously and progressively be involved in for the rest of my life. Why? Because it's the continuous increase of new experience. It's the continuous increase of the flow of feelings. So if I really want to keep my own experience of dynamic growth occurring, it is only going to occur when I choose, free will, to desire to want to dilate this position. And the feeling of this position would be tenderness, sweetness, softness, kindness, and a single word that we use the most, which is humility. Humility would be the continuous experience to feel every feeling inside my own self. Now, you can begin to recognize the sincere desire to feel every feeling, known or unknown to me, inside my own soul. Now, that position, number one, is the position related to respiration. On the higher principles, it's related to inspiration. On the personal levels, it is aspiration, where I need to be the one personally responsible for seeking the increase of my capacity to feel. And then it is going to be measured by some criteria. The criteria: why am I doing this? What's my motive? What's my intention? What's the sincerity of my purpose? And then how to be able to increase the capacity to feel, increase the capacity to feel. We have many suggestions about how that can be done in many different forms of dynamic exercises, even while moving, or quiet exercises with eyes closed or open, and the symbologies of all of those things relative to the times of the day, the seasons of the year, the specific person that we're suggesting, just suggesting that you might learn to actually emotionally love more than you ever have in your life. Now, if I said to you, this position happens to be inspiration, aspiration, and humility, and it's the one thing that you'll probably be doing forever, is the continuous increase of feeling. To produce the dynamic flow of that willingly makes a big difference. Now, one of the biggest differences, I urge you to start with a person. Well, that person means you on one level, but that also means the actual biological person that is your biological grandfather. Now, the reason for that is, and I'm trying to save you several decades of other mistakes I've made. For example, if you focused on and you meditated on inspiration, 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 well, you're likely, because of the degree of sincerity and commitment of time and exercise, you're likely to receive some inspiration. But when inspiration becomes a human being that's your biological grandfather, I can assure you, you're going to have a different experience with a long-term ability to feel inspiration. Now, it doesn't mean the man had to be perfect, because I've never met a grandparent yet that was perfect, but it's not about how he was, it's the degree to which you send love toward him. Without expectation that you get anything back, just increase your own emotional experience of the desire to be kind and caring, compassionate, and loving toward your own biological mother's father. Now, if you did that over a consistent period of time, well, I can assure you, you're going to have many forms of sensitivities coming to you. And the way that you see life and or times of the day will also shift. Now, here comes the alchemical important sequence, that the emotional increase needs to be intentionally directed. So, for example, if I could increase my emotional mobility or dynamic flow by 3 to 5 times just by my effort, well, the emotional content already has locations where it's automatically going to go to, and those things are instinctual or compulsion or biochemical. So if I increase my emotional energy, they're automatically going to go to places that have habits already. And we'll talk about that more so, but those are the habits of the past. What you can do with grandfather number 1 is to create, ideally, a more loving habit for the future. Now, the link between grandfather number 1, your mother's father, and grandfather number 3 is your mother's mother's father. They're not genetically related. Now, in order to be able to connect them, it is a choice that you make yourself. So if I will spend time with my grandfather number 1 and do all of the emotional content over a period of time and continue to do that, then I'm going to take the intended emotional consequences or results of that and direct it toward grandfather number 3. Now, what that looks like to me is I would have already started to appreciate grandfather number 3, and I'm going to now direct that life force inside of myself. I'm going to direct it toward a specific attitude or feeling. That attitude or feeling would be some desire to discover, some desire to have open-mindedness, some desire to experiment, some desire to want to understand, and then maybe some desire to really discover. And eventually, with enough flow, that's going to be a sincere desire to orient all future feelings toward truth. Now, I just said a mouthful right there. To orient by desire all future feelings toward truth rather than compulsion. Now, they will automatically go to compulsion, and they will continue to go to compulsion until there is a threshold where the increase of the desire for flow, feeling, and humility linked over to truth now produces a new threshold. And when it does that, it's going to create different feelings. And I'd like to share with you what some of those feelings might be. So I'm going to show you a different diagram. What you have here are 2 columns. You have the 1, mother's father, that we're referring to, the 3, which is mother's mother's father, and that's ultimately going to be connected to number 5, 1, 3, 5. But what I found is that the desire to connect number 1 to number 3 automatically increases number 2. Now, if you look to the column to your right, that column to your right happens to be the 3 grandmothers on the mother's side of the family. Number 2 is mother's mother. Number 4, we've referred to her before, that's mother's mother's mother. Number 6, we referred to her before, that's mother's father's mother. You have 3 grandmothers who are actually the husband and wife pair of each one of those grandparents. Number 1 is married to number 2, that's your mother's parents. Number 3 is married to number 4, that's your mother's mother's parents. Number 5 is married to number 6, that's your mother's father's parents. Now, what I found is that the sincere desire to increase number 1 and mobilizing the desire to increase number 3, truth, automatically reaches a threshold where number 2, the circle number 2 on the lower right, is activated. Now, I won't go through my own personal experiences of it, but over a period of time, any increase in number 1, if you're truly going to increase your capacity for your mother's father, it's going to lead automatically to an increase of his feelings and your feelings about your mother's mother. Yes, you can also go there ahead of that and increase your appreciation for your mother's mother and the relationship of your mother's parents and the dynamic between them, because they have their own circuits. But what happens is, this is the position for empathy, the number 2 position. The number 2, mother's mother, is also related to your ability to feel yourself. It is the primary location for personal self-image and a whole bunch of other very important things. So I'm saying that every time we talk about, which we're doing right now, we're talking about your mother's father. We're spending more minutes talking about your mother's father than most people have done in the last year. We spend 10 or 15 minutes just talking about mother's father. We're talking about feelings. We're talking about humility and inspiration and aspiration and a whole bunch of other things about how that affects the metabolic system. We're talking about mother's father, and we're linking that up to the pancreatic or metabolic function of grandfather number 3. You're spending more and more time and attention. At first, that time and attention is more or less an intellectual focus. You're just learning, you're experimenting, you're putting your time and your attention there, and at a certain threshold of the amount of time you put there, depending on the emotional sincerity, it automatically opens gates. That gate I'm referring to is the flow between number 1 and number 2. Now, the importance of that cannot be understated. The significance is number 2 represents empathy. Now, everybody knows the basic definition of empathy, but I'm going to suggest there is a different application for empathy than the definition commonly implies. For example, the definition of empathy is the ability to feel the feelings of others. So empathy is normally observed as an outbound instrument of how you feel the feelings of others. But I'm going to encourage you to consider that one of the chosen uses of empathy is to put the empathy back inside of yourself. So with the increase of empathy, if you put your empathy inside of self, and then you're going to use the empathy to feel your mother's father, you're actually going to begin to experience the feelings of another person, your mother's father, inside you. Phew, I know that sounds a little odd, that empathy would be the instrument to reveal feelings of someone else inside you. While the other person we're referring to is your mother's father. So if you would increase the empathy, put it inside number 1, I can assure you your sincerity, your earnestness, your feeling will start to increase. You put number 2 inside of number 1, and you're going to have an increase of a greater capacity to feel. Now, that greater capacity to feel, you can voluntarily choose to direct your feelings toward the increase of awareness, you want to call it that, your ability to understand, your ability to act on something, to comprehend. You can also use the same feelings for discovery, experimentation, and one of the precepts of the experience of opening and humility is open-mindedness. So if you increase the feeling and you take all those feelings up to number 3, then you're actually developing an increase of the desire for truth. Later on, yes, we can define the parameters of what truth might mean to you or anyone else. That truth might be my truth, your truth, somebody else's truth, Aristotle's truth, the biblical truth, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita truth, or maybe truth from some direct source if you would choose to make it truth. Later on, your emotional content becomes more and more activated if you do another significant thing. Take number 3 and put it inside number 1. Take number 2, put it inside number 1. Empathy and truth redirected back to your own grandfather. So I'm saying, I sincerely desire to increase my capacity to feel. I sincerely desire to want to feel every feeling inside my own soul, known or unknown to me. I sincerely desire to direct all future experiences of the increase of feeling toward truth. In this moment, I choose to put the truth back inside of myself, to know the truth about my mother's father and the truth about how inspiration actually works on a voluntary basis, and how I might use aspiration to do that. Now, I know those are a lot of words very fast. I'm saying feel and humility combined with empathy, combined with truth, automatically takes it to another level. Whew. We're not done. Number 1 is married to number 2. Number 1 opens number 2. Number 3 opens number 4. Now, if we classify, just for dialogue purposes, that number 3 is truth, I'm saying that truth opens the heart. 4. I know that's kind of a different perception for some people. Some people think it's love that opens the truth, but I'm saying no, it's truth that actually produces the mobilization of feelings that would be useful in opening the heart. That's number 4. And then according to what's at number 4, there are a series of adjectives or words that we commonly use for number 4. I'll give you some of the common words. Accept, allow, open, receive, let go, invite, experience, and a few of the useful ones, receive love, the ability to not judge. The qualitative experience of the series of words available at each one of these locations actually changes according to the degree of the dynamics that you're currently using. So for example, on that number 4, I used a whole series of words, but I didn't use some other ones, such as forgiveness or grace, or a series of other very important words about the capacity to mobilize the experience of metamorphosis, the use of being able to change something from dark into light or from suffering into joy. That's why the number 4 position is so important, is because it mobilizes everything from 4, 5, and 6. Now, if you take number 4, that you're now just academically learning about intellectually as mother's mother's mother, and the acceptance or the allowing or the receiving or the ability to be able to open more, then just put that great grandmother inside of number 1. So if you have number 1 and you put number 2 inside, empathy, number 1, and you put truth, number 3, inside of number 1, then you put number 4 inside of number 1. All that means to me is the sincere desire to accept and feel, allow, open to the capacity to feel with my heart, my mother's father, and how that corresponds to my development as a soul. Phew. Wow, we better pause there so we're going to come back to here. Now, by the way, you thought this was just an academic experience. You just got your bell rung. I took you through a sequence intellectually of mother's father, mother's mother, mother's mother's father, mother's mother's mother. We did these things, moved them around, and you're kind of going, I'm not sure what he's talking about all the time, but just sitting through it is already begun to alter your feelings about yourself, your mother's father, your mother's family. It's starting to mobilize feelings. And then if you're already starting, remember, the mobilization of all future feelings ideally would be pointed toward truth. And later on, we'll explain why, because the other side of the family, it has habits. It's called the past. It has very big habits. And we'll describe why it's so important to start with the mother's side of the family, mobilize the feelings over a period of time, link them into your activities, link it into your breath, and I'm inviting you to learn how to link them into the month of the year. For example, those of you who are in the Northern Hemisphere, this is one of my favorite months. This is the transition month from summer into autumn. This is the month of what we call the two-girl month. That's Mother's Month. It's the month of the quieting and the cooling and the coming inward, and it has feelings to it. And if you just feel it a little bit and you spend the month increasing your capacity to appreciate your mother's mother and the experience emotionally about the content of it, it's going to be quite beneficial for you to do that. I urge you to consider that this month is a, well, pardon the pun, a very cool month, but next month is even a little cooler. That's Mother's Mother. That's the yin of the heart. And then the month between November 21st and December 21st is what we call the six-girl month. And that's the, if you will, the last of the mother's side of the family, the women on that side, and corresponds to the winter season. I'm going to pause here for a moment and ask, do any of you have comments or questions so far? I know you're kind of on the spot here, but plus we have the lawn people outside the window, so pardon us if we're a little bit noisy. Comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm a little bit lost. I'm trying to take it in, but I'm a little bit lost.
What was that?
I said, I'm trying to take it in, but I'm a bit lost.
I think being lost and admitting you're lost is being transparent and authentic. That means you're on your way to not being lost.
Okay.
Because if you weren't a little bit lost after this, you're probably in denial. But so it's okay to feel a little bit lost while in a matter of 45 minutes wandering through your family tree and experimenting with things that are not very common. And to be able to consider that your mother's father has a profound significance on you. And then if you have children, it's going to be mother's father. So if you have children, relative to you, mother, in your case, mother's father, so mother's father, so your children will experience their great grandfather in that way, because for you it's a grandfather, for them it's a great grandfather. So it changes position in the family tree, and it produces different symptoms in your children. If there was a difficulty between your mother and her father, it affects you in one location, it affects your children in another location, and the darn thing has a way of moving around in different generations. So here's what I'm suggesting. That by the intentional desire to want to feel more, you grow. The intentional desire to want to be responsible for your own future-oriented happiness, success, well-being is 100% your responsibility. So what I'm suggesting is there might be some specific ways to do that most effectively for yourself and future generations. Then to be able to go, okay, the sincere desire to change my life, add to the happiness of my life, whatever it might be, is going to be contingent on the degree to which I have humility.
Okay.
Simple word, this word called humility. I don't think it's quite so simple. So what does that look like, feel like, and act like? What does that word really mean? I've been examining it for decades, and I don't think I've scratched it, really. I've learned about its mechanical function. I've learned a lot more about its location and even how it's mobilized, but it may be the single most important soul attribute that each of us develops in our capacity to be able to continually grow.
Now you mentioned soul attributes. When we're thinking about the different grandparents, is that also the intention to develop our soul? So the question that I had was, we're talking about the different grandparents and that we want to feel them, connect with them, but does that assist us in developing our soul? And if so, how?
Each one of the positions that you see here, this is the long-term operational system of our capacity to change, mobilize, and grow. To me, these numbers are actually the first level of the energetic systems I need to learn for myself in order to actualize my progression, not only in life, but after I pass. Yes, these to me are the 12 different locations within the chakra system. And you have different qualities of those from the mother's family, those from the father's family. We have the ones that go up the front and we have the ones that go down the back. And this is a circulation of feeling and the capacity to be able to accept the responsibility for each one of them. For example, I'll just pick one. Number 5 on the red side. For most people, that doesn't mean much because it's a nomenclature system. But number 5 on the red side for me has to do with things that are global. Number 1, family. Number 3, community. Number 5, global. Self, others, and all is another way of looking at it. 3 gates, 3 locks. Number 5 has to do with a very important feeling. The sense of unity, or the sense of touch, or symbiosis with all living things. Its higher attribute is the generosity of caring through the experience of compassion. And number 5, yes, it corresponds to the thyroid function. It also is the instigator of the immune system. So the ability to be able to actualize my immune system in my body has to do with a particular grandmother, father's mother's mother. How did she feel about her life? How do I feel about her? Well, on a scale from 1 to 100, how much do you like dear old grandmother? Most people, they haven't met father's mother's mother, and yet she's very much responsible for the cohesiveness of our relationship to the animal kingdom. She also links us into the plant kingdom, and the mineral kingdom. That's pretty important. She links us into the bones, the nerves, the muscles, the glands, the organs. You certainly know that the system in the body that touches the entire body, the immune system, it's in the blood, it's outside the blood, it's between the organs, it's in the organs, it's on the skin, and scientifically it's on the hair, but not scientifically, it also connects the physical body to the spirit body or subtle field. The same system that connects our physical body into our subtle or etheric or spirit body is the same system that connects us to the unseen world around us. All living things. Now, you can have a very dear, tactile relationship with a child, and that's a family, and that's a mother. If you move up an octave, then you can try to do your mothering in the community, and that's called service, education, or touching, or nursing, or healing, or law, or many other forms of bringing your orientation to health and well-being. But that's usually within your eyesight, usually within your capacity to touch them, talk to them, and so on, right? And you can offer them medicinal herbs, you can help them with nutrition, you can do massage work on them. Then comes right above the 3, where that is, now goes up to 5 and says, can you do the same thing without your senses? Can you have the same degree of affection that you have for a baby at your breast, your child, multiplied by a community at least 10,000 times, maybe more? Can you multiply your affection for your baby times 100,000? And then can you multiply all of that globally? Can you have the same level of sweet tenderness that you had for your own child, for every child, human or otherwise? Bird, fish, tree, animal. Did I mention all living things? That would mean the spirits walking around you. That would mean things in the spirit, all living things. Are things that are past, are they dead or alive? When people die, are they dead? Let's see. Compassion for all living things, does that mean only things you can touch, smell, taste, or see on Google? Or does that mean something higher? Can you have compassion for all living things?
So question.
Yes.
So if I'm wanting compassion with all living things, that's very abstract. That's very almost, how do you even get there? You're suggesting that part of the way we get there is going to this grandmother and feeling her and feeling maybe what she might have felt, even if I have no idea much about her?
Yes, you can go directly to your father's mother's mother, and you can do your best to increase your desire to know something about her. Yes, we're doing it right now. We're talking about father's mother's mother, and we're putting attention there, and we're trying to practice acknowledgement, appreciation. Yo, grandma, thank you. I never got a chance to meet you, but I hear that you're, really Tarzan's wife. And if you're really engaged, then you're the Amazonian Wonder Woman, and you're capable of unifying all things on earth. And well, that's pretty powerful. Oh, by the way, she's a very, very strong woman. That doesn't mean her life was like that. But that soul level attribute inside of you is. And sometime in order to be able to get to that soul level attribute, you kind of have to move through the dross of what's there and sometimes open it up and feel it. But before you go there, I would suggest, well, what you should do first. If I would suggest what you do first, well, it's pretty easy. It's called number one. Number one would be mother's father, the sincere desire to feel. Mobilizing the sincere desire to feel first, then you point that later on, you take it over here and you do that with this one. Did I mention that you might want to connect that to number three? That would be the truth. The sincere desire to feel with some degree of empathy, feel the feelings of another, and the desire to know the truth while exercising my free will. Let's just take all three of these over there and well, throw in that one as well. Oh, forgot this one, the yin of the heart. Take her, wait, I don't have enough colors today. Do you get the general idea that if you really want to go over there, start with number one? The sincere desire to want to grow and feel and actualize aspiration, inspiration, and do that for the purpose of whatever your motivation is, health, well-being, happiness, change it if you want, tenderness, innocence. Why are you going to go and do this again? Why do you want to contact grandmother number 5? Well, that's called the reassessment of your own motive and purpose and intention. My suggestion is use the one you have now and constantly re-examine it. Yes, I urge you to consider grandmother number 5. And oh, by the way, that's global. Guess what the COVID did? It took us global. The power of being able to activate this position drastically changed 9 months ago. Okay, 7 months ago, depending on where you are. But last March for most people, February, January for some other people, but we went global. Now, what that means is, weirdly enough, we went from global down to stay away from me, stay away from me, stay away from me, I'm going to stay home. And have to re-examine my personal belief systems about who I am, what do I believe, what do I want to be, how do I feel about my life, my children, my own self-image. The globalization has given us an opportunity to do a reset on our own personal aspirations about what we want to see in our world in the future. That's the challenge. So the globalization function has, for me, opened the upper gate of number 5. And that leads into, well, what's above number 5 is number 6, and we'll have to use a whole different spectrum of colors for that. Did that make any sense? Somewhat?
Yeah.
So, would you like to ask a question or dare ask me to explain that a different way, or? Was that a question? I saw lips moving, but I didn't hear any words. Let's see. I saw lips moving again, but the head was going side to side.
No, I don't have a question.
Sorry about that. I couldn't help.
Fair enough.
But here's what I'm suggesting. One by one, increase the feeling. Appreciation, gratitude. Link it to another one. And experiment with linking 3s together. That's the alchemical clue, is how to link feeling, truth, and free will. Feeling, truth, and authenticity. Authenticity means the sincere desire to want to live my life the actual way it was originally intended to be lived. Oh, that's a lot of words in one sentence. Authenticity, living the experience of my actual soul as it was originally crafted in the beginning. In order to do that, the sincere desire to want to feel and grow in that direction, learn the truth about it, and apply it in action. Now, just so you know, the number 5, called free will, throat also, parathyroid function. Sometimes it's the Michelangelo or the Leonardo, or it's, I need a good female artistic creation. I'm always using the patriarchy too much. Leonardo, Michelangelo, artistic creation. Aren't there any like highly creative geniuses that are women? Madame Curie or somebody that. Georgia O'Keeffe?
I like her.
Well, see there, that's my limited understanding. I barely know her at all, but I'm saying that the creative expression is also feminine. It's on the mother's side of the family. And I'm suggesting that the mother's side of the family is where it's ideal to start. And the reason for it, she's probably responsible for about 80% of your overall emotional development, because she has such a very strong influence into your biochemical arena, meaning that she wove together your physical body, she fed you in the womb, and she fed you oftentimes with her own breast, and she fed you after that. So the biochemical association of mother to child is extraordinary.
So
And
I have a question now. So
what, we don't feed kids anymore? Or?
no, what you're suggesting that we start on the mother's side of the family and we're gonna kind of, well, go through the 1, 3, 5,
Yes.
because we want to know the truth about ourselves and you know, our own individual expression.
Yes.
But in doing so, how would we make that a practice? You know, is that something that every day we do something? You're suggesting that we go feel the different grandparents. Could you give an example of how you might do that in a given day?
I think there's a taskmaster in the room. I like things relatively simple. I know it's hard to believe. 5 seconds in an hour. To me, 5 seconds in an hour has a profound impact. If you do your best between 4 in the morning and 10 at night, 5 seconds an hour, and you do that for one season, it's locked in.
What exactly are we doing?
The sincere desire to do number 1. And the sincere desire to do number 1. And the sincere desire to do number 1. That during the day, the sincere desire to feel more, the sincere desire to want to grow, the sincere desire to want to actualize human kindness within myself, the sincere desire to be in this moment, and this moment, and this hour, and this hour, and this hour, the sincere desire to want to know the truth about my own self, just 5 seconds in an hour, then go about your business and continue doing the habitual things that we all do. To me, this is the most simple, practical way. Now, we plan to provide a guided tour. So we plan to provide all the necessary notes, diagrams, beautiful colors, booklets, journals, and then provide experiences We're going to provide some guided tours of this for each position that you can access on your own. You can have a video that describes number one in multiple different ways, describes number two in multiple different ways. And then we're going to suggest that you, when you're ready, we might want to invite you to some small group mask appropriate activity where you get a chance to engage in an experiential activity. Like, for example, if I suggested to you that a single hand posture might change your feelings about your mother's father. What? I'm saying that postural communication has a way of directing life force in the body. Hence, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, they're all designed to be postural forms of communication to re-enhance the circulation of life force. So if I were to suggest to you, and this is just an experiment, by the way, give me a hand posture, shape, feeling, one or both, that you feel would be the one that you would use for your mother's father. What kind of, no, not that one. No, not that one. Well, I'm not going to give it to you. I have mine. I would suggest, by the way, there are hand mudras if you want for each one of the positions, but we don't need to get that technical. Just give me, so how about, anything that's sweet, kind.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
So one of the things, we do have the journal, thanks to Nellie. So that can be downloaded from Rayid International. And that actually, I think, is a good starting point too, to just journal the feelings that you have about each grandparent or different feelings at different times of the day. One of the things too, you can look at is some of the graphics on the colors. So Ed Nelly has put together like a rainbow of colors for the different birth order positions, which are those positions, but they also correspond to the grandparents. So just actually even visualizing the different colors, I've found helps me to connect to those different grandparents, maybe the different attributes. It's actually a practice that I've done, especially at this time of the year, because the colors are so beautiful. And you can look at the sky, you've got that grandparent number one that we're talking about, and then the different colors of the leaves are the different grandparent colors. But even to take in those colors and feel those colors, Danny was mentioning we can do some experiential with colors, maybe music, but also those feelings, to feel those attributes, I think can make a big difference for us to really notice those feelings, and then to eventually do it according to the time of the day. So there's the different times of the day that correspond to the different positions. So integrating all of that, I think, would go a long way towards feeling. But again, the primary thing is to feel.
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Did you happen to notice that we're global? We've gone global in the last 9 months. I would suggest that the category of the global is now available for us to engage in and utilize wisely. That is, I would suggest that a group of people in the world doing the same thing you're doing, with the intention of wanting to do it personally, alone in their own house, home, family, community, but recognizing that they are part of something greater and their singular desire to want to be engaged in the unity of all living things would automatically provide a greater circulation of life force than just doing it alone inside yourself. I think there's a personal responsibility that we have to do our own work. Yes. And it's real nice if we have a friend or a group of friends in the local community to do it with. That's nice. It's nice to know there might be a community of people larger than that who all simultaneously want to engage in a compassionate relationship of changing our social, emotional, economic, spiritual system of living together, maybe. Well, while we're at it, we might as well just change everything all at once. But that would be a voluntary thing if you wanted to. So our goal is to enlist a few people to do this. We just happen to have a international network of sometimes slightly crazed people, of which I have nothing to do with their insanity. If you want to participate in a group like this, or you want to engage in the theoretical understanding of your mother's father and its impact on your breathing and your metabolism, you want to do that alone, wonderful. I think that will work. If you want to engage in that on a higher and higher level of knowing that it's a national thing, heaven's sake, in our country at least, we definitely need some help on the national level. All of the polarization things going on in the world and how that works.
Well, I would suggest, even very simply, particularly for us on the Northeast or the Northern Hemisphere, you're talking about, the truth, feeling that grandparent, but then also linking it to the fifth grandmother. Really, that's the wanting to know the truth about the fact that we're all connected, that there is unity, and actually spending a few minutes a day to actually feel compassion for all living things is one of the simplest things that I think we can do that can actually heal ourselves and the planet, because the other alternatives is looking at the strife and upset. And if we focus on that, that's what we get. But if we focus on that unity and linking and utilizing those grandparent positions and also the birth order positions to help us to motivate or elevate to that compassion, like your global gratitude that you had, I think that's the way to go.
Well, we're also organizing the opportunity for people to get started by December 21st, regardless of their location in the world. And then Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, give them information and or exercises that are possible week to week, month to month for that season. And you can start in that way. And we'll supply information or videos. And one of my favorite ways, by the way, and I know this sounds odd for an old guy, but one of my favorite things to do is to use music and then do different forms of movement to the music while associated with a specific circulation. What does that mean? Well, you use soft, dreamlike music on some of the yin positions, and you use drum beats and fire on some of the other positions, and you engage the body as a way of engaging the feelings of the music. Music is extraordinarily useful for being able to activate feelings. And if you're doing that while feeling a grandparent or a circulation, well, you get the idea. Then if you get really, really bold, which I urge you to consider getting bold, you do all of this gearing up to the equinox. The equinox on March the 21st or 2nd, I think this year, is a transition, obviously in the Northern Hemisphere, from winter into spring. The reverse always in the Southern Hemisphere, obviously, of changing it back and forth every equinox. We have some suggestions of what you might consider doing on the equinox to be able to maximize the circulation of the life force in two sides of the family tree. It's really good if you've prepared for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months ahead of that to receive the greatest potential benefit of circulating the life force on the equinox. I'm not exactly sure what the solstice is going to be this year, but we're going to be doing something with the polarity extremes of the longest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, longest night of the year in the northern hemisphere, and what does that mean for all of the people on Earth? Heaven help us. So, how are you doing? Any significant little, this is really, we said this was an introduction, really. This is practice. This is really not the whole ball game. This is just, if you'd like to get involved in these activities, you're getting a better idea what it's about, how does it work, what's the underlying principles about it. No one's asked me where did it come from, you know, never mind. I only answer questions when I'm asked. But.
No, I think the only thing that I wanted to add is, well, thank you for joining in. This is just another level of the birth order with a little bit of cycles and seasons and family dynamics, but it's just so many layers and levels to it. So I think really we'll continue to do these workshops, but ideally it could be a 2-day, 3-day course or retreat where you understand the principles, but then also experience them.
Well, let's give them a picture of where it's leading.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't know we had a picture.
Do we have a picture?
Oh
Go
yeah,
ahead.
let me show. Let's show them where it's leading. Okay, all right.
Which one?
What was the other one? The
downloads.
Yeah, where's your download ones? This one, the spirit body.
This one.
Let's see, is that it? Yes, let's use that one.
All right.
Here is a graphic that we found on the internet. And to me, this is about the best example we found that is close to accurate. This graphic to me is true in many ways. This color, the powder blue, by the way, really does exist. And it really does circulate in this ascending torus-like movement up the middle of the body, out the top and around again. It circulates. And you'll also see there is a distinct vertical axis coming out the top of the head, coming in the bottom of the soles of the feet and coming up. Like in a tree, it's the xylem up and phloem down. I particularly like the color of the pink on the inside, and you can see how they have it well done as a map down to the physical heart. And I think there is a really important significance about the acknowledgement of the physical heart and the function of the physical heart, particularly the pericardium, the double-walled skin around the heart, and its capacity to produce this color of pink, or with mother and child, it would be an oxytocin kind of bonding experience. I like the pink, I like the powder blue. I like the 23 degrees of the arch at the top, but we won't go into that for now. This is ideally where we'd like to lead. Is how to vitalize, acknowledge, circulate the life force in the human experience individually and collectively.
Exactly. And so the intention would be to heal our own bodies and to heal our communities and the planet.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we can.
That's just a reasonable thing to do under the circumstances.
Yeah.
So oh, by the way, we just held up a mirror and Did you get a close look at yourself on the powder blue that you didn't realize that you had so much powder blue and pink? So
Yes.
thank you all for being willing to share your time like this and to come and give us the opportunity to keep developing materials. We'll be continually developing materials over the coming years, but you're welcome to start with this. See you again sometime. Anything else you want to add?
That was it. Thank you very much. And we will see you soon.